are debated, truths often denied. Scrutiny sharp as the southern winds bite. In our Aotearoa's halls we spark the fight. Scrutiny, the stakes are high. Questions that sort of pierce the sky. Democracy's fire never runs dry. In Aotearoa we ask the why. The echoes of history paint these walls, where whispers of change answer the calls. Aotearoa beats bold and strong. We challenge the wrongs to make it belong. They say it's a game, but we see the cost. Every decision, a line that's crossed. From the mountains high to the ocean blue, the people watch the power accrue. Scrutiny, the stakes are high. Questions that sort of pierce the sky. Democracy's fire never runs dry. In Aotearoa we ask the why. The echoes of history paint these walls, where whispers of change answer the calls. Aotearoa, we ask the why. The echoes of history paint these walls, where whispers of change answer the calls. The Aotearoa, we ask the why. We ask the why. Debate like
And good evening and welcome to tonight's Order Paper podcast. I have a feeling gate crashes on the way in as we speak. So for those who, today we have successfully managed to garner the select committees of, estimates of vote transport, the Honourable Winston Peters, Minister Farrell, and also the estimates of vote construction, the Honourable Chris Penk, Minister for Building and Construction, that would be on there. So let's kick off with Willie.
Being away through that period of time. The team has also taken the approach of reducing the number of sailings, and I think that was reported to earlier select committees. So we have more outage periods for the maintenance of each ferry as they age. There's no doubt that as a ferry gets older, it will require more maintenance. We have had the international experts in looking at the asset management, done a detailed asset management plan for the fleet as a whole and for each individual ferry. Every component of the ferry that has the potential to fail has been taken through what's known as a bow tie analysis, which looks at potential causes of failure, the actual event, and then the remedies for those. Introducing what's known as FRACAS, which is a systems engineering approach to each of these matters. So insofar as is practical, with the fleet we have a very sophisticated asset management system in place. The fact is that they are old ferries and therefore there will be, they just have a greater potential prospect of failure in certain areas. Now, those failures are normally minor and they are detected and you simply have to cancel a sailing. It's not great in terms of customer, but basically you're doing that, you're finding the fault and fixing it. And the one in the Sounds the other night was a classic example of a fault being found, detected, hold for a while, you fix it and you sail and you're fine again.
Okay, what is...
Tony, can I just say, this is David Gordon, and this is Chris McKenzie. I should have pointed out which was which.
Sorry, I got that from your written introduction.
Well, it's there, but you can't tell just by that.
I knew one was, so I assumed the other was the other. But anyhow,
Just trying to be helpful.
thank you, Minister.
We've seen Dave at least many times, and Chris, well, congratulations.
Can I ask, please, what is the budget for the maintenance of the current fleet?
I cannot give you that off the top of my head, but I do know that we are appearing in front of this committee in a week's time.
Okay, so you'll have that
And that
available
answer
at
will be
at that
available.
point.
And
Thank you.
Duncan Roy,
No,
who's the head of
understand.
Islander, will have those detailed numbers.
No problem. Thank you. Minister, we've just heard the reality is that there will be a reduction in sailings. There will be, from time to time, with a reduced number of vessels in the fleet, things that do happen, unfortunately. What is your expectation in terms of contingency to provide little to no disruption to the public around being able to use a resilient Cook Strait ferry service?
The ability to provide no disruption in the circumstance which we're operating, it would be just utterly over-optimistic. But there are contingencies to handle the difficulties we might face in the interim when we get ready for 2029.
What do you see those as?
Well, you don't answer?
Yeah, look, certainly.
No. I'd like, this is a serious issue around, contingency planning. As Minister, what do you see as your expectation around contingency? Do you expect, for example, that the public should have to put up with ongoing regular disruption to service?
One of the essential natures of leadership is that you pick people to do the job that you can trust to do the job, and you trust them to do the job, and that's why I've got Mr. Gordon here to answer the question.
Okay.
I think there's 2 points to do. Firstly, New Zealand's coming down to a 4-fleet ferry across the strait. That means our relationship with Bluebridge has to be very strong. We have to ensure, and it's a mutual thing. We can't have a situation where 2 of the 4 ships for the Cook Strait are in dry dock at the same time. So we will work and have worked closely with Bluebridge to ensure that we've got our dry dock and wet dock set up so that we're not at a stage where there's only 2 ferries operating. The next thing is both ourselves and Bluebridge have disruptions on occasions. We have a service which we do work with each other and say, if you've got an issue, then we'll take your customers and vice versa. It is an area where you'd call there is strong competition and sensible cooperation where there are events that can mutually affect us.
So an overt reliance on Bluebridge.
No, look, I think that's putting words in my mouth. There are 4 ferries crossing the strait. The 2 operators cooperate in terms of outages, and we look after each other's customers in the event of there being an issue. It's just sensible commercial behaviour.
Can I, Minister, ask you about the provision for cancellation costs of the existing contract? Has there been a conclusion reached in terms of the repudiation of that existing contract?
I think I've said for some considerable time that we're in negotiations, and until we know the details, it would be most unwise to say anything about that.
So you can confirm that those negotiations have not concluded then? They're still ongoing?
Well, most certainly, that's a fact, yes.
Okay.
However, can I just say, reality was we began in May of 2020 with a $401 billion proposal for 2 ferries. And when I finally got back, it was passed on Treasury's calculations and others, passing $4 billion. And where the cost of the ferries was going to be less than 20% of the total proposal. And so we were staring down the face of a Tasmania. We've got the ferries, we've got no infrastructure.
I note that, you just
How many more you got?
one more on this
Okay,
one.
cool.
I know that your comments that are written here talk about the previous government on track to 4 billion, but it wasn't actually at 4 billion, was it?
It was at 3.1 at the time, but the Treasury's forecast said it could go past 4 to 4.2 billion.
If decisions were taken by that government at the time, those decisions were not taken, and so it's not accurate to suggest that that was something that could be taken.
No, the government had made the decisions. It had contracted for 2 ferries. The consequence was that the infrastructure would never been ready in the first place and was going to blow out way beyond any cost told to anybody in the public at the time. That's why the ferries were going to be, on the worst calculation, less than 20% of the total cost. We went out in May of 2020, when I was there as a minister, to buy 2 ferries and come back to find we've bought a whole infrastructure cost with no accountability as to how we're going to get there and who's going to pay for it. And I'm actually astonished that anyone is seeking now at this belated hour to defend that decision.
Well, there's no defence. It's just pointing to the fact that, you know, in your own language, you're saying was on track. This is a government that likes to talk about things being on track.
This time it's got a reality to it.
I guess there's an issue of where tracks go to. Can I just ask a couple of
I'm not sure how much you picked about that, but Gavin, the first part of the select committee must not have been live streamed because it just felt like we entered a conversation midfield.
Yeah, I mean, all I got is that they were talking about ferries. I'm just trying to find a timeline for the ferry debacle. So
I also gave you had to go back out to the street to get your road code.
well, actually, I couldn't be bothered putting the road cone back last night. It was too wet. I'm not gonna put a lone road code out when it's raining. I'm not a monster. But yes, I'll see if I can get a ferry timeline.
Okay, so should we hear what Uncle Andy's got to ask?
Yep.
quick supplementaries? The first one of them is that the big areas of saving between IREX and what is now being proposed. And also I've put another part in that with the Aratiri. My understanding is talking to the Port of Marlborough that was pretty much attempting to do a live switch of, so keeping the Aratiri operating at one stage while trying to effectively use one wharf to switch, or wharfing structure to switch between rail capable, non-rail capable, rail capable, non-rail capable, which came at a pretty sizable cost. So just interested, first of all, in that detail, but also in the where the big savings are likely to come from, particularly the port infrastructure, which is required to support.
Well, others here are better able to answer the question than I. Accepting what we've sought to do is to reuse as much of what is there now to fix up what has to be fixed up, and to end up with a more flexible system with two ferries that are actually going to have greater passenger, greater cargo capacity. Is that a fair summation?
Yeah. I think what I'd say is the design of the ferries and the infrastructure has been driven by Wellington, in that we are reusing what is the old dry dock wharf that the Aratiri comes into at the moment. And by using the existing alignment, the vessel itself is being designed for an off-centre rail load, which is used in Europe. And then we can use the same thing over in Picton. Picton is in a different position. The original infrastructure was built for the Aramoana. It's lasted through to now. That has to be replaced. And so in Picton, we will replace the link span to match that of Wellington with an off-centre load. We're making savings in other areas in that, apart from some tweaks to the rail yards in both ends, we can use the existing rail yard. IREX had a completely different plan for the rail yards in Picton in particular. The other area that we are saving money is in the marshalling areas for motor vehicles, both passenger and freight trucks. So we are using the infrastructure that is there. We are refurbishing, replacing some key infrastructure, which includes the link span. And apart from that, we're not doing anything else. There are no terminal buildings, so the existing Wellington terminal will remain. And in Picton, the temporary terminal that is there will continue until someone replaces that in the future. So that's where a lot of the savings are being made.
Because my understanding, when you said that sort of we were on track to have about 20% of the cost being the ferries themselves, and the other 80% being the infrastructure, that the lion's share of that was proposed to be in Wellington, with a much smaller share being at the Port of Marlborough.
Yep. The Port of Marlborough is a bigger project because we're basically rebuilding
it, yes,
the whole foreshore area.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. You talk about savings in other areas being the onshore infrastructure. What's going to happen in Picton that will affect the township and others to actually build this infrastructure? How much are the people of Picton going to be displaced by having this work undertake, or is it minimal?
Picton is not going to be affected by our project at all, apart from the overbridge that was always planned for Dublin Street. All of the changes in the township of Higton were done by IREX.
Okay.
And so we are not changing anything. We are using the existing railway line, the existing road access into the port, and the existing berthing structures.
I'm sure that people will be happy to hear that. What proposals were floated for selling the Inter-Islander from the state books and having someone else run it? Why do we? Why is this,
You would have to answer.
Minister, why was the decision made?
For the general notes there.
Yeah. Why was the decision made to?
Let me tell you why we're not making that decision. Because Booz Allen in its 89 Ford's report announced in 1992 that the turnaround of railways was seen in between 36 and 38 million that year, forward for the next year to 100 million and rising going forward. In October of that year, Parish got themselves made the financial advisor, and in April of the next year, 1993, they jumped across the other side of the table without tender and said, hello, we're the buyer with Wisconsin Central Railroad. And their shares blew out to 188 million in the 3 weeks when the public worldwide found out what had gone on. Then it went bust. Then we had to buy it back. So we're not going down that pathway again. We're going to build an asset that New Zealand people can be proud of and make it a seriously competitive business.
So when you say competitive, how are we going to measure the competitiveness against Blue Bridge? Is Blue Bridge going to be relying on any of this infrastructure that state will be providing, or is it going to be two standalone businesses that operate in a single market together to make sure dry dock infrastructure is being utilised properly?
Well, one of the main users of Blue Bridge is main freight, and he says this plan of ours is a no-brainer. He agrees totally that we need competition, but I'm talking about the big issue of railways across the board and the Inter-Islander. It's a serious business we're going to build, and we're going to be highly competitive, and that's a message from the bottom up.
The bottom up.
Yeah, we're going to the unions to say, we're going to save your jobs, we're going to save your futures, we're going to make sure you get the training you've got, but you've got to help us get there. We're in a business. And so certain things that you thought were the past entitlements put against, for example, Blue Bridge's entitlement for their staff are going to be matched up, not in the way that you might think, but we want a fair go here because we're trying to save a critical industry in this country.
I think, colleagues, if we can.
Okay, let's get to some actual comments on there. Now, for some who have mentioned about Dublin Street. Okay, Dublin Street is this, according to Google. So this is where the rail overbridge was meant to be replaced, but stopped midway through the project. And the reason why they needed to put an overbridge here was because the fact that every time a ship came in, the railway crossing would be down for about an hour. So that's the reason why that was looking there. So if you look at 2022, you could still go through Dublin Street. It still had its things there. If you look at 2020, the road cones. There's something...
Oh, much to Brooks Van Velden's delight. No road cones.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, here's something also interesting. There has been a notice issued to both the Marlborough District Council and to the residents of Picton that Kent Street over here is going to be re-gazetted as State Highway 1, and then State Highway 1 from this section will be handed over to the local authority. So, at which, you know, okay, mate, get out of the way there. We don't want to head to Novus. Because the access that goes in and out for the ferry terminal is mainly going through Kent Street. It's not going down Dublin Street to the closed railway crossing and then heading along State Highway 1. And also the other thing is the fact that all the ferry infrastructure actually enters and exits onto Kent Street anyway when it's going on there. So that's and this is recently, like this is in the last week that the gazettement notice has been put out.
Yep.
Yeah. So that's just some random facts about Dublin Street and Kent Street and what other streets do they have in there? I mean, they've got a Devon Street, they've got a York Street, they've got a Market Street, a Broadway, a Waikawa Road. They've even got a High Street and an Auckland Street. How fancy.
Oh,
yeah.
very fancy. I've just been reading through the and I put that document in the chat, the ministerial advisory reports regarding ferry procurement, information release. Yeah, so it looks like the soonest we're going to get the new ferries that Winnie is talking about is going to be 2028, 2029. Now, I have heard through the grapevine that Labour stopped funding on the IREX project, like they said, no more new funding. I'm going to have to dig into that to find out why, where the blowouts occurred and everything, to see if Nicola Willis's argument for cancelling the IREX actually makes sense. Because I don't, for me, it's not passing the sniff test.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't feel like it passed the sniff test. I've just been sent a document from Detective Rogers.
Like
so
that.
I've just forwarded that to you. Apparently, it's page 37 and 38. We've got to check. This is what I like about having a team of people here. Now this is going to get good. So thanks for this, Detective Rogers.
I haven't got it in the chat. Can you send that to me through the chat?
Yeah, I've sent it to you. I have to send it to you via Discord.
Oh, okay, yeah. I'll go have a look.
No, I've sent it to you via Discord because that's how it was received. And otherwise,
yeah, it's like I'm sorry, guys. Ferries is not really my specialty, but I'm learning as we're going through this. Just double checking stuff.
So this is the thing here that's in Wellington. This is the document here. Oh, I remember. This is in the press release where this is a map of Picton showing Wellington, and then this is a map of Wellington showing Picton. So yes, I drove on that motorway today. Yay!
Nice.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah, and here's the.
Oh, okay. Okay, all right. Detective Rogers, this is a really good document. Thank you for sharing this. I'm going to enjoy reading this. You know me very well.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Right. All right. Okay, cool. I've got 2 good documents open. Yes. Now I can note take properly. Sweet.
Yeah. But yes, no, this is the so yes, as you can see there, this is Picton. And obviously you see so much red. It's just absolutely crazy. Yeah.
Yep.
Just down the bottom here. Oh no, you guys won't be able to see it. Yeah, down the bottom here, Dublin Street Railway Crossing, as you can see in the bottom corner. I don't know, Dublin Street seems going to be the big thing for tonight. Yeah. Yep. And yes, and obviously we've got Wellington here, which...
I'm just reading through that document that you've just sent me. Page 7 of 71 is redacted. Ferry delivery agreement. Can't even read that. Okay. That's
okay.
Nice.
Yep.
Yeah. What? Yeah. Okay.
Funny, page 8. See, this is a great thing here. We got the redacted documents on screen.
This is great. Thank you, Detective Rogers.
Yeah. There was more in my inbox.
Nice.
So off to your inbox.
Give us all the receipts. Yep. I'm going to open all of that up.
Oh, sorry. Hold on. Ooh. Oh, yeah. No, that's arrived. Yeah, and I forwarded it on properly. Yep, that's good. Yeah. Shall we move on while you read documents up?
Thank you. Yes.
Managed to try and deal with the issues around the Inter-Islander first. And then
But I love the history
the
of
general
things
ferry.
here.
Sorry.
I love the history of things here because I don't want to make the same mistake again.
Pretty good. Tracy.
Thank you. You're talking about negotiating with the union, and I know that you won't be able to provide any more details. I was just interested in that previous exchange. But due to the early withdrawal of the rail-enabled ferry, can you give us any information about what were the job losses based on that decision?
We're still in the negotiations with the union about that, but common sense suggests you go down from 3 ferries to 2, you have proportionate loss of jobs. The question really is whether there are people on the other ships, because people tend to stick with the ship, as opposed to floating between the different ships. There will be people on the K ships who may want to, the business and people on the Aotearoa who may want to stay around. So it is a bit more complex than simply saying one ship down, one crew gone, one set of crews gone.
And have you had any advice about concerns about ensuring requisite, amount of talent and skills and expertise, and whether this decision impacts the future of building it from the bottom up and maintaining those services and
I
skills?
think any decision that involves losing experienced staff brings in a certain amount of that risk. That is a risk that we have to manage. But I can't say that we'll absolutely keep everyone who we really want to keep, and vice versa. We may lose some. On the other hand, there will be people who on the Aotearoa who desperately have the skills and desperately want to stay in the quick straight business. So we'd have to let that run its course through the union negotiations.
Julianne.
Thank you very much. I wanted to ask about retiring the Aotearoa several years before the replacement ships arrive. What impact is that going to have on rail freight between the North and South Island? Are you concerned about losing any customers during the time? Because clearly, and what will the impact be on the cost and time of moving containers by rail between the North and South Island, of doing the road bridging?
I can answer that in a little bit of detail, but I'd suggest, Julianne, that we're in front of Select Committee in a week's time.
Right.
Duncan Roy, who is the GM of Inter-Island, who will give a far more comprehensive reply than I can. What I can say is we aim to fight to keep every customer we've got. We can only do that by giving good service, running on time, and the Inter-Island's on-time record is in fact really good. We're 100% reliability over Christmas, and we're in the very high 90s for reliability. We've got to offer a service. Sure, we would run. It's much more efficient to put it on and off by rail than it is to unload it, road bridge it across, and put it on. So that's why we're delighted we still have rail ferries coming into service. We just have to work hard to keep everyone, and that's it doesn't introduce extra costs. We're talking with the key customers about who should bear that cost for that period.
And what's the capacity of the ferries that will be running in the interim to carry containers relative to with the Aotearoa?
Well, we don't have rail freight capacity anymore, so we are taking. We'll be using truck deck for the rail freight. For most of the year, we're not running at 100% full, so therefore we will be. The ferries will be fuller. It will be harder to get a slot on both ourselves and Bluebridge, simply because there is one ferry down. Having said that, there is sufficient capacity to carry the volume we currently carry.
Was there an option to run the Aotearoa longer?
No, and maybe Chris can answer this a little bit better, but the port build program that is in place requires the Aotearoa dock to go. So there is no choice. And Aotearoa is not configured internally to be able to load lots of freight because it doesn't have an internal ramp. So it's just not suited to be a roll-on, roll-off freight ship.
And when the replacement ferries, which are still not under contract, right? I mean, do we have a contract for the replacement ferries yet?
No, as I said, we said in the paper, there are bidding yards, and when the matter's finalised, later in the year, we'll.
I'm sorry, what? We don't have a contract yet?
So, but
Yeah, I know. I just heard
can you
that.
guarantee that they will be rail-enabled roll-on?
Holy,
Well,
okay.
with respect,
Forget what I said
this
about
is as clear as
2028,
daylight. It's been for months
2029
it's going to
then.
be rail enabled.
Okay.
That's what this whole talk, the conversation and option was always about.
Do you know what
We don't
the,
put out press statements for a joke. We put it out because we mean business.
Any more? Can I just ask one question on that? Because
Sorry, Uncle Andy, we'll just stop you there temporarily. What the flaming hell about where we haven't got a new contract? Are they waiting to potentially lose the election and then for Tangi Utakira to ring up Hyundai? Hey, I'm just wondering, can we pick off where we left?
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm reading through these documents and saying, oh yes, the soonest that we can see them is 2028, 2029. We haven't even got a contract yet, so we don't even know how accurate that number is. And as for jobs, he couldn't even answer that question. So I had a quick look on the Googles and found that from the cancelling of the IREX project, Kiwi Rail is proposing to axe more than 50 roles. We don't have the full number yet, but the net reduction of 46 roles includes 9 deck officers, 6 engineering officers, 3 maintenance officers, and 38 deck ratings, including a number of volunteers. I thought, why doesn't he have that information on board? Like, shouldn't we have a projection of how many? Like, come on. Why don't we
Maybe
have the
he has
stats of how many
assumed a bunch
jobs?
of people are going to retire.
Yeah, why don't? Oh God, I'm getting really frustrated with this government. The fact that they can't even give data for like how many jobs have been impacted, how many potential jobs we could have had, how many we.
Yep.
So again, I'm reading down on the Herald article. I don't know if you want to bring it up and show it, but it's saying that a voluntary retirement program.
Are you able to message the article to me, please?
Yeah, I'll chuck it in the chat.
Yeah. Because I can't copy and paste it from the actual chat, from the public chat.
Yeah. No, I've just chucked it in the private chat. But yeah, it states in the article that a voluntary retirement program for CF. Wow. Okay.
What a great ad! What a great ad! What's the ad for?
I don't know. Thanks, Harold. Yeah. So it states here that.
Fiji.
It states here that a document sent to staff said the proposed changes were part of the plan to enhance Inter-Islanders' performance commercially, operationally, culturally. Okay, I don't know how job cuts are going to do that, but here we go. A voluntary retirement program for seafarers launched in early 2024, along with natural attrition, has seen the workforce reduce from 353 staff last July when it was running 4 ships and planning for the arrival of the 2 new ferries, to 324 staff in September. The proposed changes would see staff numbers reduced to 278. So, okay, yeah, it would have been nice if, I don't know how accurate that is, or how specific it relates to IREX, but it sounds like the cancelling of the ferries is having a wider impact on the rail industry as well.
Yeah, well, what do you expect? What do you expect from a, anti-rail government? Well, an anti-rail government with a guy who's like, it's rail or nothing.
Yeah, it's like, how hard would it be to contact the Marine Union or Maritime Union and ask for the numbers? I mean,
I don't know, but we can get a member on there, but he doesn't work. He doesn't work for the ferries. He works for the trains. But
Ray, where are you? We need you. Come on, this is your
I don't think he'll be able to give us the answers, though.
No, but at least he can give us like a position from experience about how these cuts are impacting him.
I don't know. He's a passenger service person, so yeah. I'm not sure if he'll be able to give us the answers.
I don't care, Ray. I don't care. Ray knows more about trains than I do. that's.
And just on something like Detective Rogers said earlier about was expecting road cones. I'm a descendant of Richard Trevithick's.
I thought you were about to say you're a descendant of road cones.
No. Richard Trevithick's world's first steam engine. I'm just going.
Oh, nice.
So I'm just about to bring up his Wikipedia page. So I'm a direct descendant of this guy.
Well, you kind of look similar.
Yeah. Well, should we just say, and put it this way, my mum's brother, Richard James Trevithick, just take a notice in there. They actually haven't got his full name on there because this one actually has his middle name James, and it's the reason why mum's brother Richard. And just those who are watching out there who realise that my dad also has a brother called Richard, yes, that is correct as well. And gets even more funny. My my brother's mother has a brother-in-law called Richard.
God damn! Hey, I just realised that my ancestors probably worked for your ancestor on the railways in England.
Possibly.
Yeah, because they were also based in Cornwall, Devonshire.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
like, oh, okay, my ancestors worked for your ancestor. That's pretty. That's kind of, it's funny how history's repeating itself. I'm working for you.
Oh, okay. Volunteering, but yeah, okay, yeah. But no, I mean, here's the thing: is like, I mean, this is like Richard Trevor. I mean, he went to South America and back with his train, with all his train stuff. He he went all over the place. Like, you know, the fact, like, you know, yeah, he went to definitely, you know, he went to South America and I wonder if he went twice, I'm not sure. This does have a bit of history into it. But yeah, he went to South America and back. But
Hey, I
yeah,
mean, Winston Peters is so old, he probably met your ancestor.
No, but he might have met the Richard Trevor that was born in Auckland in the early 1900s.
Nah, come on. Winston Peters is like over 200 years old. He would have met your ancestor, the one who made the steam engine. That's how old he is.
Because there is on Ancestry there is a Richard Trevor born in Auckland, like New Zealand born Richard Trevor, but I'm not sure where that fits in the family line for me. Yeah. But there is
and
one.
Your ancestor comes with a cool statue. Based.
Well, if I go to the UK, of course I'm going to have to sit there and check it out. Gee,
Yeah, of course.
Well, put it this way: he lived longer than Mum's brother Richard, and he died. Holy heck!
Champion Cornish wrestler. Damn.
He died literally near 90 years before Queen Elizabeth II was born.
Yeah.
Because I think Queen Elizabeth II's birthday is 22nd of April. It might be 23rd. But yeah.
I just like the fact that he's pointing at the background.
Yes, Detective Rogers, the reason why trains are on there is because who I'm a descendant for.
Okay, right. Okay, so there we go. By DNA, Sam knows about the steam engine. Amazing.
Yeah. Yes, but yes, my generation lineage of 6 generations revolves from that last name. Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Shall we get back to Uncle Andy? Talking to Winston about steam trains. Yep. Oh, and bye-bye, Richard. Hello, Uncle Andy.
Met with the Port of Marlborough last time I met with them. They said that to keep the Aratiri operating, it was basically it was a live wharf. If you'd have one wharf, every single sailing, they'd have had to rearrange the ingress to the vessel, and they put that cost at, I won't say it's the cost of a new ship, but over the time, it would half the cost of an entire new ship to do that. Is that your understanding? It's probably.
The issue with the Aratiri is quite simple. Picton intend to lift their link span as early as October because they have, as I said earlier, they have to do their whole foreshore rebirth. Mm. So we'd have a ship sitting in Wellington, but it couldn't go anywhere. And so the Aratiri is coming out of service. It lines up with the need for the Aratiri to go off for a dry dock. That wouldn't be in any way sensible because it would come back and one end wouldn't be operating. So in Picton, the Aratiri dock and the Aratiri going means that we can demolish the long arm that the Aratiri lines up against at the moment, because that's where the new dock comes in, and you can't do that while you've got an active ship. Picton's got the issue of it's got the Blue Bridge just on the other side of that, and it's got the K boats on the other side. So the only way that we can progress and prevent a Tasmanian type issue is to take the Aratiri out of service so that they've got a clean workspace.
We might be able to sell it to Tasmania because they've got 2 ferries that don't. They've got 2 ferries and no infrastructure. Does this sound familiar? Has this got a ring about it? Right.
But I mean,
Just the last point I'd make on that is the other reason the Aratiri can't stay is that the Aratiri, unlike the 2 K boats and the Blue Bridge boats, don't have internal ramps. And so any access onto the rail deck can't get anywhere else. And there's no way you'd put stuff on the top. one of the advantages of the vessels that we're designing is that if there's no railway, it can still be used as a road-pax boat. A road-pax boat can't be used as a rail boat. So in fact, we're getting flexibility in the vessel that we're looking at.
Julianne?
Oh, well, I suppose that the timing would have been really good if we'd got the original ships in and online by 2026. There wouldn't be this disruption to rail enablement of 4 or
Well, hang
5
on.
years if the
How are we
project
going
had
to build
carried on.
infrastructure in time? This is exactly what happened in Tasmania.
Well, I think
You
if
got the boats, but
RX
you haven't
hadn't
got
been
the-
cancelled, we would have had the infrastructure and we would have had the boats.
Rash, can you show me the full program that underwrites that? That you had prepared at the time when you made that decision?
Well, I wasn't the
Well, that's,
decision
no,
maker,
no, no,
but
no, well, these are what are the alternatives are. Can you show me the forward construction program that would deliver that on that? And with inside the cost that you said at the time you made the forecast.
I was never the Minister of Finance. I wish I had been. Maybe I could have made some better decisions, like yourself would have. But I think it is the case that we're going to see some disruption to Kiwi Rail's business in terms of moving freight between North Island and South Island because we have at least a 4-year or 5-year gap of not having a rail-enabled ferry. And it'd just be interesting to know if you can quantify the cost or the impact on that, or whether it's just something we're going to have to wait and see what the impact is.
I think some will be a wait and see, but as I said, I think it's a question better directed at the GM of Inter-Islander in a week's time.
Tony, you had a question on
Yes.
the intro. We'll try and deal with all the Inter-Islander questions in one hit, and then we'll move to other parts of the rail business.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Look, Minister, I appreciate that you've had to come in and basically clean up the mess that Nicola Willis has left around ferries here. And you yourself, talked
Excuse me,
about.
I'm not gonna settle for that sort of preliminary to your question. with
Well,
respect-
let me put it-
Because this is a select committee and I'm entitled to have my response to what you say.
Let me put it this way.
But maybe phrase it slightly differently.
You have indicated that you have used your skillful diplomatic skills on a visit to Hyundai, which may have gone smoother if the Minister of Finance, Nicola Willis, had not perhaps led to relationships being established or communicated by way of text messages and those sorts of things.
True.
Given that you have indicated that delivery will be 2029 at the earliest, what gives confidence that everything is going to be on track for a 2029 delivery?
The international circumstances of business competition is seriously heightened now. There's greater reasons for companies to make a commitment and deliver on it than there ever was. It's not easy to do business, it's harder. And so one of the reasons why I do think our conversations with Hyundai went well is not only have we paid them the proper respect, but they are interested in the business.
And I think that respect bit is very, very important. In your opening remarks, there is reference around the commercial matters and not touching on the details of that. However, the intention is that a contract will be signed later this year. Can I just ask that the question is everything on track, and is there some confidence in basically being able to sign that contract with whoever the preferred provider will be at that time? Maybe that's a question.
The answer to that is yes. The ship's program director, along with 3 international partners, because we don't have maritime lawyers and ship brokers and so forth in New Zealand, they have visited the 6 shortlisted shipyards that we advised previously that there were 6. All 6 shipyards have given an undertaking that they will deliver in Q1, Q4 of 2029, provided a contract is signed between Ferry Holdings Limited, the government and the shipyard by the end of this year. We are aiming at the moment to be slightly ahead of that, and we are slightly ahead of it at the moment in that a result of those visits, the information is already coming back into Ferry Holdings on what their detailed proposals are.
So from Ferry Holdings' perspective, you're confident, Minister, one of the partners that do need to sign up on that is the government. From your perspective, are you confident that the government is on track to be able to hold up its end of of that particular bargain?
Look, I'm not trying to duck your question because it's an interesting question. But if somebody got before you and said it gave you absolute guarantee, that person wouldn't know anything about business. But am I confident that we're doing the maximum we can in the climate we can to get a contract? Yes, I am.
Can I just ask about sequencing? So you're in the process of negotiating now. Do you think there will be, once we have the ships or like the contract for the ships and the design, some need for investment in port side infrastructure that will be related to the final design of the ships? Or can you make decisions about that without having the contract for the ships?
Well, look, we already have, but perhaps you could answer that one.
We are not signing a contract for the ships until we have the commercial arrangements with the two ports. And so we do not want A, to get into a Tasmanian situation, or B, get into a situation where we have a vessel that can berth in Wellington, but we haven't finished Picton. So we are working with the two ports, along with Kiwi Rail, on ensuring that when we go to a contract with a shipyard, we have the same confidence in the two ports delivering the berth for the two ferries.
And is the expectation that the ports will fund any changes to port side infrastructure?
The commercial arrangements for the ports are still being negotiated, and so until that's finalised, we won't be giving any numbers on either what the Crown or the ports are contributing.
So the answer is yes, but to what degree? We cannot at this point disclose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And can I just ask, and perhaps this was covered earlier, but in terms of the previous contract with Hyundai, has there been a cancellation or a break fee that we've had to pay with it?
We've had that.
Yeah.
Well, but part of the Hyundai operation cost, some of the utilities have been saved for our future purpose. And that's not being factored in by a lot of people talking about the total cost.
So what would you put the total cost at right now?
Oh, well, let's say we're in negotiations.
Okay.
Do you know anything about business? You announce the deal when you're completed, not
What?
90 minutes before.
Can I just ask, no, so Dan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
What the fuck?
What was that question? Do you know anything about business? I'm like, I don't know. Do you know anything about business, Winnie? I mean, are you a businessman? Are you gonna give us a lecture about how to run a business?
He's got more experience as being a deputy prime minister than actually knowing about business.
So I don't know. Do you have an MBA? Like, what do you have? Isn't he like a lawyer?
Yeah, lawyer. Yeah, lawyer. But when did he last practice?
Yeah, good question. I would not. I don't know if you'd be able to pass another bar exam, but yeah. So
I mean, hey, most people except for King Charles would be retired by now. Well, most people in the British Commonwealth would be retired, except for possibly say King Charles. But then at the same time, Joe Biden's still in office, Trump's still in office, Bernie Sanders is still in office, Nancy Pelosi is still in office, Dianne Feinstein died in office. So who knows?
Yeah.
And Winston is young compared to, say, Dianne Feinstein, who was in the 90s when she died as senator.
I just want to know why he's asking Julian Genter about land infrastructure timelines. He's the minister now. Shouldn't he have access to all the information? Shouldn't
Yes, and I wonder if it's based on the point when she was Associate Minister of Transport.
Like, I mean, he should know this data like off the back of his hand.
Yeah, you'd hope.
I mean, I'm having to just listen to all these questions and go, okay, I'm going to go through the documents that I've got. I've got several open now.
And then if Director Rogers keeps saying to me, this page.
Yeah, but the current infrastructure. I mean, look, the ports still have to be upgraded, right? And at the moment, the timeline is looking like, okay, the soonest it's going to be done is 2029. Under the IREX project, the soonest it was going to be done was next year.
Yeah, well, and if they don't sit down there and we got to
consider the fact that Winnie hasn't even written up a contract yet.
Yeah.
We don't even have a contract, so we don't. Fuck. When is the boat
Here's
coming?
something worth noting about Wellington's port infrastructure. This section here has recently been built up ready for IREX.
Oh,
So this section here was pretty much undeveloped before the announcement of IREX.
speaking of IREX, I found that, I think it was Treasury, because I've just looked at this report from Treasury. I'm pretty sure it was Treasury that advised Labor to not invest any more money into the IREX project. So for people that are saying, oh, Labor bad because they cut funding to IREX, that was done based on the advice that was given to them by Treasury.
Yeah.
I've got the document here. So it's a lot more complex of a situation than just, oh, but Labor did this, so therefore National is justified in cancelling the entire project.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you watch Scrutiny with Chris Bishop earlier today, I watched on Kiwi Pulse. Oh God, that was really, there was a lot of it, but at least it was like all civil. I mean, there was no mudslinging.
Yeah, I mean,
at least the Bishop doesn't act like David Seymour.
Yeah. Yeah, when he, this is hard to watch. And I'm not an expert in ferries or trains or anything, but I'm just, he seems to be having difficulty, like, bringing up data from the IREX project. Like, if you're going to argue that the IREX project was shit, you want to come with data. And
I don't think he wants to argue that it was shit. I think he's kind of enforced on it.
Yeah, I mean, wasn't this like one of his babies when he was working with Labor?
Yeah. Yeah, that was the thing.
I don't know what I'm watching.
Yeah. You're watching reality. You're watching Reality Check TV, a subsidiary Spanish brand of that online media outlet, Reality Check Radio.
Yeah, no, I'd rather flush my head down a toilet.
But this one's actually in reality.
I would rather grab my head and flush it down the toilet than watch Reality Check TV or whatever the hell it's called. I don't want to watch that. I lose brain cells. I already lose enough. Look, I already lose enough brain cells. I don't need to lose more.
I was going to say, you lost brain cells by watching a clip on the platform.
Yes, I don't want to lose more. Every brain cell is precious to me. I get hit in the head enough. I don't need to lose more.
Yeah. Okay, let's see more from Dan Bidwar.
Thank you, Minister and David and Chris. Related to the previous questions, if we fast forward a year from now, what for New Zealanders, I mean, what can they expect in terms of key decisions that have been made by yourself, Minister, or Cabinet regarding port infrastructure, regarding the ferries? Give us a sense of what New Zealanders may be able to have confidence in. I know with respect to your comment about business, it might be difficult, but, fast forward, give us a sense of key decisions and milestones that you're working to.
Well, can I say, I'll ask one of my witnesses here to answer that question. If you say fast forward for a year, no, fast forward for half a year, because that's the level of programming we've got out of this framework in.
Yep. In answer to that, there will be a ship's contract and there will be a commercial deal done between the two ports. And that is the major decision of Ferry Holdings. Ferry Holdings may very well look different in 18 months' time because we will be in the process then of the construction, the ships will be being constructed and so forth. And so there may be a slightly different configuration to Ferry Holdings itself. So there will be no decisions post the end of this year that will need to be made by either Ferry Holdings or the government. There will be some other options that we will be looking at. We'll be working with QRail and Inter-Islander on the operational requirements of the two ports along with the vessel. Inter-Islander will be closely involved in the layout and so forth within the ships. But apart from that, once those contracts are signed, then it's all hands to the pump to actually get the things done.
Right.
And the other point to make is it's up to the two ports to deliver, but very closely working with Ferry Holdings. So, as I say, there's no major decisions, but it will be a all hands to the pump, which includes the two ports and the shipyards.
Fantastic. Thank you.
And I was going to ask that just one question there on the ports. So what I'm hearing is that you've pretty much got the ports, you've worked out with the ports what it is that they need to look like, you know, what the physical arrangements are, and then it's about the commercial arrangements behind that. Is that where we're at?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just on the ports, Wellington will look very much as it is at the moment. There'll be a slight change to the rail because the new vessels under Solus, their freeboard has to be higher, and so the link span has to be adjusted. Trains don't like steep hills, and so there will be a slight change to the rail alignment as it comes onto the vessel. In Picton, it will be a new infrastructure, but it will be roughly where the current infrastructure is. And it will still be dual loading rail and trucks below and cars and trucks above at both ends.
Okay. Are there any other questions on Inter-Islander? Okay, I'm going to do one question which is sort of transfers us from Inter-Islander quite neatly, I think.
Well, hold on there, Uncle Andy.
I got a question, Sam. You might be able to answer this. This new infrastructure proposal that they're saying, okay, it's going to be done at Picton, the same location as the port, right? Where the current port is. Was the IREX project proposing to build a new port somewhere else, or were they going to use the current site?
It was the current site, but it was the redevelopment for the current site.
So, based on that answer that was given, what degree of difference is there from this proposed plan from the IREX project?
A lot of the capital infrastructure work that would have happened at Wellington isn't happening. Okay,
so that's the key difference. Okay, all
yes.
right.
And that was where the significant cost was, because the fact that the piers had to be drilled 70 metres deep, because at Kaiwharawhara, where Kaiwharawhara stream is on a fault line.
Oh, yeah. Okay, that makes sense. Okay, all right.
Yeah. And it was the Wellington end that had the significant cost, right? Because the original place in Wellington, I'll show it on a map on here. I've just moved it to Picton, but I'll show it back to Wellington. So I'll just flick it over to here. So in the original, so this is where the current ferry terminal is. They were looking at making the new IREX terminal in its first iteration was to be held here.
Yep.
Was it in King's Wharf, I think it is? Yeah, I think that's King's Wharf, because Queen's Wharf is over here. Yeah, and so I think this is King's Wharf. Mm-hmm. Which meant that, you'd have all this traffic coming off the ferries trying to intersect with the stadium.
Yeah,
God, that would have been funny when the rugby match and the ferries came in at the same time, finishing. Yeah. That would have been an absolute nightmare.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. But they would have been handy for the train station. Like, they were doing that, and Kiwi Rail actually threatened Greater Wellington Regional Council, who owns the Port of Wellington, with using the Public Works Act to put the railway line in there, which in New Zealand history, there has never been one authority like the railways issue Public Works Act against another territorial authority. Typically, the Public Works Act has only ever been used to confiscate would be the wrong word, to acquire either private land ownership or iwi land ownership. It has never been used to take local government land. Yeah. Acquisitions.
So my question is that what's the current state of the Wellington port? Like, clearly it needs to be upgraded at some point, right? It's aging infrastructure. Are we kicking the can down the road by not upgrading the port?
Potentially, yes.
Yeah, because that's what I'm getting here.
I think Steve Pritchard would be the better person to tell you that, because he actually does work for Kiwi Rail. Yeah. He would be the one who would actually know more of the ins and outs of that.
Yeah, because I know the best time to build infrastructure is now, because inflation is one hell of a thing. And why are we delaying upgrading a port?
Oh God, who knows? Who knows? Okay, shall we hear more from Uncle Andy?
Yeah.
Here you go, Uncle Andy.
To the rail network. And that is, first of all, the value to the inter-island line and indeed to any other lines, but particularly to the inter-island line, of having a dry dock, because you mentioned dry and wet docking, in New Zealand. Obviously, I'm talking about Northport. So that's the first part of the question, is what does that look like in terms of value for Inter-Islander as a business? And the second part is, how are we going in terms of delivering the rail line to Marsden Point to support that? And are there any issues around, making sure we've got all the land and the design and all those sort of things sorted out? Because I understand there is some small issue there.
Well, actually, I was alarmed to see on television New Zealand a statement out of Takaiwai, or the Takaiwai people in that part of Marae, that their land was being taken off them for this construction of a railway between Oakley and Marsden Point. What was astonishing about that was it dramatically wasn't true, and they haven't even made the effort, TV1, to find out the facts. Amongst other things, the Minister of Rail is actually connected to that Marae and knows the complainant's parents and uncle who used to be on the Whangarei Council.
Sure, that'll get sorted out then.
No, it's not the point. There's TV1 running this full-scale story about the land being taken off them when all the documentary evidence is of them being told in 2020 that this is not going to happen. That this meeting was consulted on then, and by 2023, all the advice was, no, it's not going to happen. We've found an alternative route, so we will not be touching your land at all. So there's TV1, owned by the taxpayer, running a story that's total fiction and damaging to railways. And railways is utterly an innocent party.
And the value of the dry dock to the inter-island line?
I think it's immense at the present. In a way, it's astonishing that New Zealand as a maritime nation doesn't have a dry dock. We have in the past been using both Sydney and Singapore. Sydney dock gives preference to entry ahead of civilian ships, and you can be bumped at any notice. Now, you can't run a scheduled ferry service if you've got something booked and then it sits outside. So we have to steam up to Singapore, and through that excellent service, really high technology, etc. But to have a dry dock in New Zealand would be of great value to us. We'd, excuse the pun, be an anchor customer.
Thank you. Okay, opening up further questions. Yeah, go for it. Yep.
Just on that, has there been any advice sought around dry dock and potential costings for that as a proposal?
The dry dock is being driven by MB. It's not something being driven either from Transport or Kiwi Rail itself. We've been providing advice about, well, how big would it need to be and the rest of that, but not in terms of that. It's not our project, unfortunately.
Dry dock.
Can I just say, going forward, if you look at shipping and listen to the experts like Maersk and others, Tauranga has got a temporary purpose, but the big one in the future is Northport because of its depth and its land area. And for what it's worth, it's up to this committee to make its own decisions here. But a briefing from Maersk as the future transport needs of this country on the water wouldn't be the worst idea. I mean, these people are serious international experts.
Well, we will know, I think, that we are, as a committee, we've resolved to conduct an inquiry into the maritime sector and ports. Maersk will certainly be one of those organisations we want to be talking to. Absolutely. I think I had a sup over here and a sup over there.
No, that was my sup. I had a new line.
Okay.
In rail, but
dry dock. Okay, away we go.
Oh, no, mine's not dry dock. It's
okay, right. Are
it's
there
a
any other sups?
rail and inter-island ferry related.
I thought we dealt with it.
I know, it's a bridging one.
Last one on Inter-Islander, and then I've got I've used Cam and then Tangi.
Mr. Chair, I've been
wait.
requesting the question since the first minutes of the meeting, but I don't know why my pecking order being delayed.
No, I was trying to deal with the Inter-Islander first. It's okay, we'll get there. We'll finish that Inter-Islander and then we'll come over back here.
I just wanted to know if Kiwi Rail is going to have any issues with maintaining and doing various work on the network, not having a rail-enabled ferry for the next few years? Do you have like equipment and whatnot that needed to move on a rail-enabled ferry during that time?
We do have some equipment that has to get across there. Most of it we are moving at the present moment, so it'll be gone before there. We'll be moving our new tampers down there. The key things that we'll have to move basically on deck are our track measurement cars. For the rest, with the investment of the depots, we've got enough that we can run basically a 2-island railway for the period.
Okay.
Yep.
Right. Carlos, I'll give you a question now.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair. So my question to the minister is, why does rail maintenance in New Zealand, especially in Auckland, often require such an extended period of service disruption? Where else in other countries, similar maintenance appear to be carried out more efficiently with minimum impact on service? Are there any specific challenge in New Zealand that makes shorter maintenance window more difficult to achieve?
Well, right across the board, that's been a chronic condition of New Zealand for too many years, and our job's to turn that around.
So from your point of view.
I'm talking about the roads. Where else did you go? And the road tracks, everything here is on a delayed base or taking downtime. Where else do you see cones everywhere? You go around the rest of the world, everywhere. No one's got cones. Only one country called New Zealand has got a plethora of them everywhere. Then when it comes to getting work done, it's sort of sometime never.
I've got a cone.
When some of it should be 24-hour crisis emergency stuff. I can go to the Christchurch rebuild. It's working 8 hours a day compared to the urgency that was required. We have got to turn this country's psychology around.
Yeah, so if you say like that, like from your point of view, what is the accepted period of time of service being disrupted in order to do a maintenance job in just, free station or free section of the road being, the rail being repaired? Or put it that way, do you think 3 months to 6 months?
Restoration of the previous status quo at the greatest speed possible.
Because like my question for a lot of Aucklander will be like, the rail service is being stopped for 3 to 6 months. Do you think that's acceptable?
Well, to be honest with you, we're trying to do a rejuvenation of a lot of industries in this country, and rail is one of them, because we believed in its essentiality. We're committed to it as ever it was. We've got the same inspiration that Vogel had in the 1870s when he set out to build more in 10 years than the next 130 years with horse and cart. Yeah, we've got our sights set on a far better performing rail industry in this country.
So I got a second question on that one, much easier question. A second harbour bridge crossing have been, being discussed. Do you see the possibility of including a rail or train service across the harbour? Or given the needs of more sustainable or efficiency transport option, is there any being seriously considered as part of the long-term infrastructure?
Well, I think it's an interesting question, but when the prospect between the two old parties was 3 tunnels, 2 under the harbour and 1 on the North Harbour, that not costed, of course, and the other one with no sort of plan at all. I'm just not being critical here, but no real plan. To us, for forward plan a railways when there's no plan, it's slightly difficult.
Okay, Tony, and then Cam.
Gee, I think someone's sitting there trying to give a bit of a jab about the, what's he call it, every weekend having rail replacements in Auckland. Despite the fact that there are no train tracks that run through your electric, Mr. Carlos Ching.
Maybe he wants all the railway tracks. I mean...
No, there isn't actually, no, but his electorate, however, does have a designated railway line to be built through it. It just hasn't happened yet, but the designation was there, put in there in the 1960s or 50s or something. It was when Auntie Ruby bought a house.
Okay. So I went through the document for the Marston Point rail link. Kiwi Rail has already acquired about 80% of privately owned land under the Public Works Act. It's currently in negotiations with remaining landowners to acquire the remaining land under the Public Works Act. Now, I hate the Public Works Act with an absolute passion.
Yep.
But anyway, that's a different discussion for a different day.
Good.
Okay. I'm not going to go into that now. Right. But yes, some of that land that Winston Peters is going on about is actually recognised as Waihi Tapu. And the iwi there are still yet to reach a treaty settlement. So you've got these iwi that are trying to go through the court processes, and you've got Winston here saying, no, we're not doing that. Give me the land so I can build the rest of the railway track.
Oh, God.
Yeah, one Māori freehold property is going to be impacted. So that's bad because that's iwi-owned land, and, Winnie wants that. So, I just get really tired when I hear people talk about greedy Maori, when the Maori out here are actually trying to go, hey, this is a site of archaeological and anthropological importance to recognise Waihi Tapu. We'd prefer not to build a railway through here. And then you've got the government over here saying, no, we need the railway now. It's just...
No,
and it's
we
like,
just
bro,
need
you
the
haven't
railway
even written
now.
up
We need the railway yesterday.
Yeah, we need it yesterday. But yes, you've got this guy, Winston Peters, who hasn't even got a contract yet for the new ferries, complaining about, we got to sort out the, we need the railway lines now. And I agree, you need the railway lines, but you can't say that, we're going to get ferries by 2029 or whatever, when you haven't sorted out this issue first.
Yeah.
But, this is a fast-tracked project as well. I do recommend people to read through that document.
Yeah. Okay, let's hear more from the Select Committee.
Those questions shouldn't come off allocation for opposition parties, although those sort of questions we'd ask.
What are we doing? Our job as an MP here.
Well, at least we like having questions that are being good questions to be asked.
Nice. Minister, there is an investment in rail in budget 2025 that looks at metro investment for rail for Auckland and for Wellington. But there's nothing for what is, the golden triangle, as they call it, yet that is in the government's GPS on land transport. So what can we expect to see in terms of investment in the golden triangle, given that that's not, as I understand it, connected to the rail metro budget provisions that were announced?
Kiwi Rail is funded for the rest of the network through what is known as the Rail Network Improvement Project.
ANIP, yeah.
ANIP, that comes via NZTA through the National Land Transport Fund. However, let's call it the funding of that fund is through the Crown, and that fund has been voted, and a decision's shortly to come from Minister Bishop on the exact value of that. At this stage, we will be able to show once that is made, the split of investment. Money will always be going into the Golden Triangle. It is an important part of our, it is the most revenue earning part of our network at the present moment. But I will make the point that that's been the case for about 15 years. So things like bridges, which are really expensive, and we've rebuilt elements of the Kaimai Tunnel, we've already done the bridges, etc. So the big lumps of capital expenditure required for the rail maintenance in that area have actually been done. So relative to its earning, it is actually having a little less invested because it simply doesn't need as much. But we are funded for the rest of the network, confident that funding is sufficient to deliver what we wish to do.
So the GPS was basically signed off by the government last year. So you then saying that if the GPS does include the Golden Triangle as an area for improvement and targeted investment in rail, we would expect to see those decisions flow through the ANIP process rather than the budget that was announced.
Yes, it is in the ANIP, in the prioritisation of ANIP dollars.
And we look forward to
and where it is being spent by geographic area, by risk, and also in certain areas by the quality of the asset.
Okay.
And the point I'm making about the Golden Triangle is that relative to the rest of the network, its asset quality is high.
Thank you. Minister, obviously the Hillside opening that you attended in open and previous governments have been part of specific funding for that upgrade there. What plans do you have in the sense of inter-regional rail connectivity, particularly in the South Island in terms of investment?
Well, I'm glad you mentioned Hillside and previous goals, but you didn't tell us the framework and the shape and the character of that previous government who made the commitment to fix it up in the first place.
So I said governments plural.
Success has many fathers, failures an orphan, and I can't believe how many fathers railways is getting now. But anyway, my colleagues can answer that second part of your question.
I'm not sure whether you're referring to freight interconnectivity or passenger.
A bit of both, actually. I mean, you know, what we're looking for, I think, as a country is an upgrade to investment in rail. So are there plans around inter-regional connectivity, not just for freight, but passenger service?
Let's talk about the freight first. So the South Island's got three quite distinct markets. The first is across the Alps, which is basically coal, coking coal, not thermal coal, and also dairy, and that's quite a distinct and discrete market through there. So the future of that coal export is very much dependent on the mining licenses that are associated with that and the duration of those licenses, because at some point we'll have to reinvest in the coal fleet itself, and that takes a long time to amortise. So there's a three-way going there between ourselves, Bathurst and Port of Lyttelton to sustain that. The second market on the South Island is the Auckland Christchurch market, that basically domestic, which flows a little bit down through to Dunedin. That stands alone. And then the third is the export market, which is predominantly dairy, but also meat. And you've got the situation that's set up at Mosgiel and other places. So the South Island's is in a good state. You know, dairy's going gangbusters. It's coming on rail. So the South Island's pretty good for there. With respect to passenger, let's look at it through two lenses. The first is the tourism lens, and both those services are going extremely well. While passenger volumes are slightly down, the yield from passengers is way up. We have introduced a premier product on those trains, effectively equivalent of travelling first class on an airline. That is going extremely well, and people will pay the premium to do that. If we look at commuter rail, there is the proposal from within Christchurch for the Rolleston, for services Rolleston and through to the north. That is something that's in its nascent stages. We'll see how that turns out, and obviously it's been promoted by the local councils, as was done with Te Huia, and we'll obviously give them the support they need to take that through to business case. We've also had the Southerner running on occasions. Now that actually went really well, but you never know whether a one-off is going to translate to something that's the same as day in, day out. And the team will be looking at options for that. Maybe we do turn about with the Coastal Pacific, etc. And that's something which we're exploring. It got a very good pickup. But as I say, whether that translates into a sustainable thing as opposed to an event, hard to know.
That's fine. Just one sub on that for the Minister. Given the return of the Southerner service, is that something as Minister that you would like to see investment directed towards to ensure that connection between Christchurch and Dunedin?
Yes, seriously. Yeah.
Yes?
Yeah. But also, don't overlook the fact that there's a whole lot of employment being reoffered to New Zealanders when the situation looked hopeless, when we were downsizing. It's turned around now. We're building a whole lot of our own equipment ourselves, both in the North and the South Island. I think that's fantastic.
Supplementary.
Thank you. Just on the freight, and thank you for that breakdown in the South Island. It's encouraging. I'm just wondering about the statement of corporate intent for Kiwi Rail. Will that, I know that's pending, will that reflect a focus on freight and, what's your expectations there?
Well, I simply can't answer that until the statement of corporate intent has been approved by ministers. It's not something I can comment on.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, let's get back to some panellists talking. How's dinner?
It's pretty good, actually.
It's good to hear. And percentage of meat or dairy products, is it still 0?
0, yes.
So what do you think about the fact that they mentioned a bit about the South Island basically is split into 3 factors: coal, dairy, or tourists?
I don't know if that's entirely an accurate depiction of the South Island's economy.
No, the rail part of the economy, the rail trip, the what is freighted in the South Island?
Sorry, could you rephrase the question?
So what's been basically said in there, in the South Island,
Yeah.
it has been distinguished into 3 categories:
Mhm.
coal,
Mhm.
dairy,
Mhm.
and tourists. As
Yeah.
in, what's the 3 biggest customers? Well, the 3 biggest things moved around in the South Island.
That surprises me because I thought logging would also make that list.
I think logging's more of a North Island thing, not a South Island thing.
That is true. I also thought that shipping general goods would also make that list as well.
One of them is meat for export.
Yep.
So under the dairy, which is classed as the export sector, the second most moved product is meat for export.
I mean, I'd have to look at. I don't know off the top of my head the numbers. I'd have to look at the data to see whether or not that's actually an accurate depiction of what is being moved by the trains in the South Island. But yeah, I mean, based by weight alone and what we process here in New Zealand, that sounds about right.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, you wouldn't sit there and send coal by truck, would you now?
No.
That's just ludicrously stupid.
Yeah.
Well, they did have to do it for a little bit for part of the section in the South Island when they had a particular tunnel was closed for 9 months. They had to ship it to Stillwater by road, or move it by road. But then a lot of it just sat there waiting to be exported when the railway line opened as well. Because I know when the railway line opened, it was literally having like multiple coal trains a day going out of there to play catch up.
But yeah, I mean, breaking it down into agriculture products, mined products, and tourism does sound about right for the South Island.
Yeah.
I don't know how specific it is to dairy or coal but yeah, I mean, making those 3 general categories does sound about right. Yeah.
Let's hear more from Woody and his team.
Okay, I think I had, was it Saf on this one? Yeah, okay.
You talked about the Rolleston to Rangiora business case, and it being modelled on Te Huia. Auckland to Hamilton population slightly different than Rolleston to Rangiora. How, I don't want to preempt, obviously, just the very, very beginning of agreeing to look at developing a business case. But does that, so Kiwi Rail's happy to partner with the local regional councils to establish
What
that?
we've said is that if they come for us for information as to what it would cost, what the train paths, etc., would be, then we will absolutely help them provide that. Ultimately, the running for these regional services has to be made by those regional councils.
Why are you eating my pizza? Stop!
With all these regional services,
What are you doing?
we're supportive.
You're a cat. You don't eat vegan
The stance we
pizza.
take is we want to make sure people go into it with their eyes wide open as to what it will cost and what, if it grows, what the growth path is and what path is and what the investment for that growth path is. I think we just don't want to go on
Asking
optimistically.
on behalf of Christchurch,
I'm
we'd
sure
be
you
very
are.
excited to see some movement in that direction.
Can I just ask a question on that? So, because in the Wellington region, we've got the Capital Connection, or you might argue the Wairarapa line as well, but which are slightly longer distance, but are run in one of them by Kiwi Rail, one by Metlink. Auckland Te Huia is run, or Auckland Hamilton Te Huia is run by Kiwi Rail on behalf of, effectively on behalf, subsidised by, bit by the Crown and bit by the region. It's a bit of a mixture. Have you got any observations on just what's the right model to run these kind of, and when you're talking about Christchurch and et cetera, is there an optimal model around these, the way in which these things are run?
One of my colleagues can answer that question. We're working on it. That's the reality. We're trying to get ready by the end of this year with the optimal model.
That's the MROM model. I think generally, if you have a passenger service which is coming into a centre, it's better that it is integrated with the thing. So it probably makes more sense for something like the Metlink brand to contain the lot. And certainly the investment in regional trains you would see being more likely run under the Metlink brand than KiwiRail doing a bit of it and someone else doing the other.
So it makes Auckland a bit of an outlier in terms of Tahuia not being run the AT brand sitting on it. And they've not been terribly supportive of it. It's been Waikato that's driven it. It's like a big smile there.
Yeah, it had to get going some way. I think the Tahuia is an interesting one because it is diesel hauled, and that means it cannot fully integrate with the Auckland network as a whole. Basically, it can't go into the City Rail link, and in fact stops at Strand. So until you've got something that can actually be part of the whole, it does. You can make sense of it being slightly disaggregated.
Okay, so Julian.
There was money in the budget last year, I believe, for a business case for electrification of the North Island main trunk and possibly out to Tauranga. Where's that at?
Our objective is to bring that proposal back around December. We've made very good progress on that case.
Can I ask the minister if he's supportive of full electrification and what benefits that could bring both to passenger and
I'm
freight?
supportive of every smart idea that works and totally opposed to stupid ideas that are experiment.
Okay.
Typical Winston.
Chair, I have a question about how
Now, just for those who are wondering, a bit of context on there. Capital Connection crosses two regional council boundaries, whereas the Wairarapa line is within the Greater Wellington Regional Council boundaries. So that is also part of the reason why the Capital Connection is run by KiwiRail, whereas the run by Metlink, and at the moment contracted out to Transdev. It used to be contracted out to KiwiRail, but KiwiRail didn't win the tender in 2015 or 16 when the new tender kicked in. So that's if there's a bit of an anomaly, and if you actually delve into the history of the Capital Connection never received a public transport subsidy until after electrification was extended from Paraparaumu to Waikanai in 2011, and when it hit that point was when its big Waikanai passenger base dropped off. It had to require a subsidy in order to do it, and every single time it came up for renewal every 3 years, you literally had to protest it. I remember seeing Annalise Galloway, then MP for Palmerston North, used to sit there and do that. My then local MP, Nathan Guy, basically never caught the train until it was under threat. He never even considered it as an importance of his electorate, which is quite interesting because it had the most train stations were in his electorate. So just some facts that can come out from a Wellingtonian. Anything you want to add, Laura?
Yeah, I just caught the Peters made too. Yeah. I was just saying that I just caught that last comment from to Julian from Winston Peters, and do you support electric rail? And then was just like, what a stupid question. I don't support stupid ideas. What the fuck? Like,
yeah, even that both New Zealand First and Greens have been wanting what was called Golden Triangle electrified since 2014.
Like, come on. Like, is it a hard question to answer?
And I'll probably say, if that was, say, asked by Andy Foster, it probably would have got a different response.
Yeah. And let's be real. Yes, it would have.
Yeah. Okay, let's see what the last bit from Winnie.
how does KiwiRail's, how do you see, it might surprise people that NZTA is the regulator, but it makes a lot of sense for the rail safety team. How do you find working with their rail safety regulation team? Do you think that they have sufficient knowledge? They have the expertise that goes back, in some cases, to locomotive licensing? I'd be interested to hear how you feel about that.
It looks like somebody was very keen to answer.
No, that's absolutely fine. I mean, the NZTA rail regulation and NZTA, the funder, it is in a way a slightly odd coexistence within the one organisation. They manage that separation extremely professionally. We work with them. We have strong conversations with them on occasion. There are people within there who have deep deep rail knowledge who we respect and have those discussions. The relationship between a regulator and an operator has always got to be slightly arm's length, and I think it's appropriate.
Cool. So, I mean, you guys, being the largest rail operator in New Zealand, you have some knowledge and ability to deal with the regulatory team. Do you think that someone who's operating, say, a small business for tourism purposes on a line that's not used by anybody else should be facing the same hurdles that you are? Say, one of the groups in New Zealand that do tours on no longer used rail lines, they should be facing the same level of regulation.
That's an interesting question. On the issue of safety, yes, the answer is precisely the same sort of restrictions on safety. But on other issues, well, now you're talking about a political decision on charge to this or returns to the state. And those are ideas that obviously a forward-looking government would be prepared to consider, because you want to use the utilities that are there to the max if you can.
Yeah.
Because if you can take people from on a tourism venture, you're taking somebody who's there for a break and a holiday, but you also bring commerce with them because they become patrons and customers and clients in small towns or in holiday areas. So yeah, I think we've got to have a very open mind about that.
It's good to hear you say that, Winston, supporting the regions as you do.
Can I add to that? The one other thing you've got to remember is that lines like Glenbrook, Wicker Pass, Dunedin Rail, actually for periods of the year carry more passengers than Kiwi Rail carries. And so you have got the same number or increased numbers, and they require the same sort of safety as running on a main trunk line.
Yeah.
And so
Of course, the question's about the ability of smaller companies to be able to resource that, but that's fine. The other question that I had, do you feel that Railways is a good partner when negotiating new amounts for licence to occupy land? That's land that a farmer or a business owner or even a council is having to manage or look after next to the railway line?
Yeah, I believe that we are. We are required to take a commercial approach to our land holdings and earn revenue from that. We have a number of leases. The bulk of our leases are close to grace and favour, very low rental, just occupy a bit of the corridor. But it takes some management to do it. When it is a fully commercial lease for a piece of for an area of land which could be used for other things, I think we're entitled to charge a commercial rent.
Of course, and you should. But how do you measure what you're doing? How do you compare it? What sort of policies have you got in place to make sure that is a fair commercial rate?
I guess it's a market and it's a competitive market. People either pay it or they don't.
It's often not a competitive market. You're talking about a piece of land that's isolated behind another piece of land. Often there's only one potential leaser. So what's the sort of process in place to manage that?
Well, the counterfactual is if we aren't able to lease it, we don't get the income. So we've got the incentive to reach an agreement as well.
We are at time. Thank you very much for answering all the questions.
You know, one thing I've just realised?
What?
We've been watching it at normal speed.
Oh, I'm okay with that. Gives me time to write notes.
Yeah.
I mean, how does chat feel about going at normal speed? I personally like it because, again, I can write notes.
Yeah.
But yeah, okay, so I don't know exactly what Cameron Luxon is asking for. Does he want private small rail that sometimes carries more passengers based on tourism, right, than main rail? Does he want them to pay less in terms of commercial
I
licensing?
don't know. Or does he want Kiwi Rail to charge more to get more money in that isn't from the state?
I'm not quite. I don't know what he wants, to be quite honest. It's like this is the problem. Like they say, deregulate, and I was like, deregulate what? Safety requirements? I hope not.
Yeah, exactly. It's
Like but what are we talking about here?
Yeah, that's the thing. I don't know. It's really, really weird.
Oh, it looks like people prefer normal speed. All right, okay. Well, no complaints
Well,
from me.
that'll only be for tonight. Once we get back to Sunday, I'll remember to switch it back up to 1.5.
Yes, well.
Because we'll try and cover more footage in the shorter space of time. So, since no one knows who this guy is, let's get to find out more about this guy called Chris Penk.
All right.
So let's kick it off.
It's needed. If I could
Yeah,
I was gonna be your left-hand man. Oh, no, please. The chair's pointed out that if we want more than 1, 2, we could also have. Oh, actually.
So if you've got anybody who you think is likely to be the key people to answer questions, and if we don't know who everybody is, then from point of view of records, we'll
Thank you.
we'll get that.
Thank you.
That'd be good.
Great.
Okay. Well, welcome everyone. Good to have you here. And what we usually do, of course, is to hand over to you for a few minutes if you want to make any opening remarks, and then we'll go to questions.
Wonderful. Well, thank you very much. Good morning, Mr. Chair and team. Thank you very much for having me and us. I'll keep my opening remarks really brief because I look forward to hearing what's important to members of the committee. And if I'm adept enough to weave in any points that I would have made in an introduction, then I'll do that. But I do just want to place on the public record my acknowledgement thanks in a couple of different directions. One is the good people at MB, and David Hall is seated at my left hand, and he has a number of colleagues here who, as we've discussed, will cycle through as need be to assist on any technical or specific aspects that I'm able to. But certainly MB have been really great. Their building system performance team are working with me and the government of the day, but also select committees on a number of different reforms. So any credit should be shared with them, and any blame obviously rests firmly on my shoulders. But I do just want to acknowledge the volume of work that's taking place and the professionalism and integrity and diligence that they've been exercising their function. The other acknowledgement, Mr. Chair, is actually for this committee itself. You guys have diligently looked at a couple of pieces of legislation now and more to come, as we know. It seems to me the thoughtful and constructive approach in terms of getting into the detail and the implications of legislation. With a starting point, it seems to me, having been from the various political parties, that they agree with various aims that we're looking to achieve, but obviously wanting to scrutinise the detail, as of course they probably should, and speeches in House often given by these same individuals accordingly. So those are my acknowledgements and thanks, and I look forward to the discussion with you for the next hour.
And look, can I also just say thank you? And we have we've picked up the ball and running with it with the PWA, which we know there's anxiousness to get on with things. So we're actually hearing quite a number of submissions today, and others on Monday is the plan. So
great. Well, hard-working committee.
Trying to get that moving.
Other hats from my point of view. Great.
Okay, so first question, Arena.
That's completely right. I agree, and thank you both for coming today. There's so much willingness in this committee room, and Labor has to deregulate in the building and construction sector, because at this point in the cycle, the building and construction sector is asking for those measures which are going to reduce costs and speed things up, and we want that too. And with so much goodwill in the sector, what's next? What are we going to bite off that are those long-term challenges that no one has dealt with, that we have an opportunity to do now?
Yeah, well, a really good question, if I may say, and I think you're quite right to mention the point in the cycle. And of course, from my point of view, it seems to me there's a boom-bust cycle over many years, and this is obviously not an original observation, and that's what I think together we can achieve to even out, as opposed to a political cycle. I think it just so happens that we're at a moment now where the understanding in the sector and in the political realm too, but generally there's an understanding that we need a building control system that is responsive to the real-world challenges, but also opportunities. I think in terms of what the next steps are, if we take a nuanced approach, a risk proportionate approach, by which I don't, of course, mean a wild deregulation in a way that would cause issues in itself, and also then risk a counter reaction and a swinging of the pendulum, as I think it's fair to say we've probably seen over the years. So we're aiming to achieve a sensible balance, and part of the balance, I think, is understanding the importance of liability settings. So, of course, for building consent authorities, and I acknowledge there's one former mayor in the room who'll be all too well aware of the challenges for local government associated with that building consent authority function, and thinking about the fact of joint and several liability currently being associated with all their work, granting consents, conducting inspections, and then code compliance certificates, of course, at the end of the process. And it seems to me would be helpful if we move to a system that is more nuanced. That's not a government decision that's yet been made, and therefore that I can speak to in definitive terms, but in the spirit of being helpful to the committee and to flag, as I have already, to be fair, in public terms, that's an area of reform that I'm interested in. I think we could end up with a proportionate liability system, for example, as they use in Australia, or some states of Australia, to clarify, that would enable the responsibility also to fall on building professionals, be it designers and the various trades throughout the process, who are undertaking the work, to make them more responsible. I think actually should make those that are able to be more accountable, take more care for their work. At the same time, of course, as we need to build in protections for vulnerable consumers and recognise that sadly there are some who will not be able to be treated as responsible in that kind of way.
And completely agree with what you've said and keen to work with you on it. One thing I disagree on vehemently is the way that the reforms at the moment are affecting jobs. 15,000 construction jobs lost. The particular part of this I want to get into this today is the 27,000 young Kiwis who left last year, who many of whom would have gone into building, construction and trades work and are in fact doing that in Australia right now and also participating in the housing market, are building and buying their first homes over there. Do any of your reforms get young people into these trades?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple of different aspects of that question, which is an important one, of course. And of course, by way of background, the macroeconomic settings have been challenging for construction activity. And other committees will this week have been talking about a pipeline of work that will be helpful to even out those flows. And of course, the problem with the boom-bust cycle that we've traditionally had is isn't just the bust part, it's actually the boom too, because in relative terms, it's not that we've had a particularly low period of activity in the last 2 or 3 years. It's that coming off a huge high from a few years ago, and not obviously to relitigate government policy from years back that would be inappropriate in an estimates hearing. But the reality is there was an artificial high that was generated for various reasons, and some of which were outside no one's control in terms of COVID itself. But the reality is then coming down and having a huge workforce geared up to undertake a level of building activity that probably wasn't sustainable in the medium term. And as you've said, we've lost some trades persons to Australia, which is unfortunate. Too many All Blacks in Warriors jerseys on building sites in Queensland, Sydney and Melbourne. We need more.
At least gives a home crowd well. People seem to blame
it is good from a Warriors supporter perspective. And we need, if anything, we need a few more Queensland and New South Wales origin jerseys on Kiwi building sites, just to keep the league theme for a moment. But in order to avoid that, we need a good pipeline of work, and the pipeline of work, again, on a bipartisan basis, I think will be helpful for large-scale infrastructure projects. And the macroeconomic conditions, of course, in terms of inflation now being back within that band, interest rates able to come down following OCR decisions by the Reserve Bank of New Zealand, and in general confidence, including with the stability now around unemployment rates, it seems to me better times are ahead, and the sector does feel that. But in the meantime, the reforms that I'm able to undertake in terms of building and construction to make it easier and faster and more certain to be able to get consent to do the work, including some categories of work without consent, will be hugely directly beneficial to getting us out of that hole in which we've dug ourselves as a country.
Is the plan to fill those gaps with migration when inevitably the residential building sector does pick up? And we lag behind for 2 years as the sector not only trains those people, but also gets back on its feet, as we've lost many of the small and medium-sized builders in the market already.
The intention is to have Kiwis trained to do the work, and obviously a number of different aspects to that. Part of it is the vocational education piece, led by my colleague and friend Penny Simmons. My contribution to that work has been listening carefully to the construction sector, as she has as well, I should acknowledge, and relaying to her the importance from the industry's perspective of standard setting, course content and delivery that is closely aligned with industry. Now, we've got a licensed building practitioner in our ranks, so he might have a view on that as well, but it seems to me that if we have a model that maximises that industry reality about how training can be delivered in order for people to be able to learn, to train, and then of course on the job training activities are available. But the most important thing simply in terms of retaining, as you've rightly noted, as well as training in the first place, will be to have good high activity levels, because then owners of building and construction businesses will feel confident they can take on people, they'll have the work available, it'll be productive and profitable enough for them to remain on their books, and then they'll be up and down this green and pleasant land, not across the Tasman or elsewhere.
That's right, but what you described as an artificial high for the building sector was Labor building homes and schools, and then paying apprentices to train up in the industry and to take those jobs on. We've seen 15,000 jobs lost, and the government campaigned on keeping apprenticeship boosts, and then cut it in half. Apprentices aren't paid and helped to be in those roles now in the way that the Prime Minister promised them they would be at the election. Why have we gotten rid of that key pipeline of skilled work for Kiwis at a time when the building and construction sector says that they need it, and says that this would be a really key reform?
Yeah, I mean, there's a huge amount of activity that flows from government procurement. For example, huge number of classrooms. I think I'm right in saying, and I don't want to put on record if it's not correct, but I think it's the highest number of classroom build activity last year ever. And if that's the case, then I know that the conversation in the House of Parliament was that, oh, well, that was all Labour's work. Well, that's fine if that's true. And it's true, of course, there is a lag effect in some activity that takes place in any given year. It has, of course, been planned in previous years, but I would respectfully say that the opposition can't have its cake and eat it too. You can't say that there hasn't been a high level of activity because it's all the fault of the current government.
School builds.
And, pardon me?
You cut 200 school builds.
No, there's a lot of still
What does that do
building.
to the certainty of the pipeline?
Arena, can we just let him answer, please?
Well, point of order, I mean, is this actually, are we talk, this is not really in the minister's role, he's not
Correct.
procurement, this is about, we want to be talking about the building industry, the statutory
Yes.
obligations, and the reforms that are coming, other things that are actually.
I think we are, I think that is correct. We are starting to stray outside of it. So I'll leave it to you to answer what
And
you
if
want
we're
to
going to
answer.
start offering opinions on it, I'd like to have a chance to offer my opinion on why we're going to approve it.
Okay, so- okay.
Yeah, thank you.
So what you want to
And-
answer
and I
next,
think
please.
Would you like an opinion from Cameron?
Of course, I don't think you'll like it, but.
I'm not sure that I get to ask the questions, but maybe I'll pose a hypothetical and see who comes in on it. But I think actually, I mean, and of course, our friend's point of order is the right one in terms of the scope of the committee. But I will say the intersection of those is that the reform work that Erica Stanford has led as Education Minister in terms of their procurement, technically outside our work program, is actually taking cognizance of the fact that within the sector there's a huge appetite for standardisation, for off-site manufacturing, for the lack of disruption, therefore in terms of classroom and school builds, thinking about construction sites in which young people are also learning, but also that's going to deliver a huge additional amount for the amount allocated. So while it might be the case that one could say, compare relative amounts on spend, the reality is we want the outcomes, we want the bang for the buck, we want the number of classrooms, not the mere balance sheet reflected in the budget that politicians can fight over.
Okay, I've got two subs on two aspects of the things that you've been asked about already. First one's the joint and several liability, and then I'm going to go to you, Dan. The joint and several liability, which, as you alluded to, we do have a former mayor in the room, who was on just about the hand back and warrant because of the liabilities being so high. If you're going for joint and several liability, have you given any thought to, I mean, often you might have dodgy builder, 2023 and, dodgy architect 2024 or whatever, something goes wrong, they go out of business and suddenly they're out of the way, which has been part of the problem. Have you given any thought to whether if there's any reform in this area, it might not be as direct, but you might say, hey, the people who are involved in that entity, that the industry knows who they are, they know that they have a dubious record, and we're not going to let them set up another entity, at least not without, I would imagine insurance will get involved in this kind of thing, but saying, well, you're a great builder, your insurance level's down here, you've got a bad record, your insurance level is going to be up here if you get insurance at all. And that starts giving some market signals to people to say, hey, you do your job properly, because otherwise, we might send you off to Australia.
Absolutely right. And of course, that's the right point, because having sat in that role, you'll be aware that the havoc that is wrought by some combination of incompetent, careless, insolvent practitioners obviously can affect very deeply individual building owners or would-be owners in the case of, first home buyers, home and build package, for example. Well, that's right. But also from a local government point of view, you'll be aware of the effect on the balance sheet of councils, large and small, up and down this land. So we do need to resolve it. And part of it is what we would call cracking down on cowboys. At an individual trade level, it's about being much more specific about ways that we can hold to account dodgy practitioners or ones who frankly need greater scrutiny. And part of the reform whereby we're going to be more enabling of those who can be trusted because they've got qualification, experience, insurance, or guarantees or bonds or some other way of providing comfort to the consumer and the system as a whole. And knowing that if we're more enabling in that space, we can provide greater scrutiny and oversight of those that are poor practitioners, poor performers. And to pick up on your point about sometimes that's an easy matter of knowing historically that a developer has turned out his or her or its pockets following a poor development that's gone badly wrong, left subcontractors as well as would-be owners in the lurch, and knowing that if we can crack down on that, including by way of piercing the corporate veil, as lawyers say, so look beyond those individual company entities or trusts or individual ownership that might seek to hide assets in a way that's frankly unfair. I'm really confident we can get to the bottom of that, and the design of a system around responsible builders being held accountable will take into account the possibility or avoid the possibility that some sort of fancy footwork by the developer and its lawyers would have them sort of avoid responsibility. So deeply mindful of the need to address that.
No, that's very good. The second part of that, which relates to the same thing. So it was interesting at Field Days, excellent opportunity to go around and talk to some of the builders of small buildings, which are prefabricated, etc. Bring them to. So some of them are really excited by the change and removing the building consent, but others are concerned about the cowboy builder. Yeah. And I just wondered whether there was any way of potentially giving surety to people, even if you're not giving a building consent to the building, that we can, because we're licensing, we're now moving to license, electricians, gas fitters, plumbers, etc. So we say, you are a good operator. Is there any reason that we can't also do the same for some of these building providers, the good ones, and say, well, it's just like your.
Don't really get out my LBP card.
But that's it to say, hey, these guys have got the A certificate. Yeah. These guys have got no certificate at all. Yeah. It sends a clear signal to the market. I'll deal with the guys who are reputable, and at least it's not their building that's being talked about; it's them, their company, whatever it might be.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, there's a meaningful conversation about where registration and licensing, including through the licensed building practitioner regime, should sit with the individual, the person, the practitioner, or the entity under whose name the work is taking place. The reality is that we don't, whatever that system looks like, we need not to have a gap between the two, such that the individual who's responsible for the work could avoid accountability, or vice versa. And in terms of that regime, the licensed building practitioner system, obviously it exists already, but it's an open question as to whether there should be some reform of that, as well as occupational licensing moves that we could make across the system more generally. And so we're interested in that. And in relation to flex policy, hearing feedback was really detailed and thoughtful and helpful about the prevalence of level entry showers, for example, in small dwellings that are remote or standalone, and needing to avoid leakage in a way that would damage that building. The decision was made by MB, and may I say a very good one, to introduce a new class of LBP license around waterproofing. So to have a more nuanced system that actually takes into account the risk associated with structures, in this case, that are otherwise relatively low risk, it demonstrates that commitment to a system that's quite nuanced in that space. So I think that would be helpful. But I will just finally point out, Mr. Chair, in terms of a lot of these moves to be more enabling where there is low risk topology as compared with the bespoke topologies or the higher risk practitioners, that to the extent that these are opt-in systems, it could be, for example, that if you are a building owner or want to own an additional building on your farm, as you've alluded to field days, you don't have to go through that system. You can insist actually on a building consent being required and furnished for your benefit or the benefit of your insurer or your lender.
Okay.
Thank you.
Feels like he really knows his portfolio inside and out.
Well, I mean, I did take down some notes. The first thing he brought up was the boom-bust cycle. You can't really detach political decisions from economic results. And I noticed that he tried to do that. He's like saying, well, it's not just political decisions that result in the boom-bust cycle. It's also economic conditions, but they go hand in hand together. And then he went on to say we need a building control system. Well, yes, that's why regulations are important. He wants to take a risk proportionate approach. Yeah, that's yes. We all want to take that, and maybe except for ACT, I don't know, not wild deregulation. So yeah, again, it makes me wonder why. I don't know. I don't know Chris Penk personally. I'd love to.
No. I don't know him personally. But I do know people who have dealt with him and found him very good to deal with.
Yeah, I would love to ask him what's his opinion on the regulatory standards bill, because if he's not in favour of wild deregulation, well, you know what's going to happen if David Seymour gets that bill passed.
Oh, yeah, it would be, exactly. Yeah, no, Chris Penk definitely has his head screwed on.
Okay, well, that's good to know.
I mean, as you're sitting there, looking at it, he doesn't make the headlines or anything.
Yeah. No, he doesn't. He's not crazy enough.
Well, I don't even think he's in cabinet either. I think he's one of the ministers outside of cabinet. I'm not sure. I'll go and have a look to see.
Yeah, you go have a look, and I'll continue going through my points. So he said, Chris then said, it's helpful to move to a more nuanced position, proportionate system. Again, that just sounds like a risk proportionate approach. So like calculating the risks and the benefits. Yeah, that's what you do with a good regulation system. So, okay, I'm glad he likes that. Put in protections for vulnerable consumers. Yeah. Public insurance. Why are we having this a free market thing? What happens if we have unethical insurance practices?
Yeah. Well, I mean, we just got to look at the United States for that.
Yeah, I mean, so he wants a pipeline of work to encourage young people to get back into the trades. I mean, that's great, but is he advocating for a Ministry of Works? Because that would ensure sustainability in projects. Because he went on to then say we need sustainable projects to prevent loss of employees. Yeah, a Ministry of Works would effectively provide that, like what we see in places like Ireland. And yeah, we would start seeing Australian workers come into New Zealand because they've got that assurance there. So it's really interesting, the points that he made, because it's like, okay, if you were to spread them all out on a sheet and go like what I did and go through one by one, a lot of these points seem to line up with what Labour is advocating for. But then he turns around and says, we need a free market approach. We need the free market to do all of this. And I'm like, how? You're describing things that the free market can't do.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Like, I think it's really interesting that Andy Foster brought up insurance ranking for builders. That's an interesting idea. I think that's worth getting data on and getting economists on board to, to figure out whether or not it's actually viable. I don't know, again, how this will be implemented. And again, with the free market approach, what happens if the insurance company engages in unethical practices? Is the consumer going to be forced into court?
The good thing we do have in New Zealand is we have what is called a double layer of set of insurance. So we have what is called a retail insurer, which unfortunately in New Zealand, most of it's ended up consolidated under AIG under multiple different brand names. But then you have what is known as called a reinsurer.
Yep.
So that is a double safe area, which is basically, and it's been built into New Zealand law for like forever, back in the day. So it is a two-tier system. So you tend to have to go to an underwriter or a reinsurer to sit there and back that to ensure that both the insurer and the reinsurer say solvent.
Yep.
And in general, that has worked with the exception of Christchurch.
Yeah.
I'm not sure about our more recent worst national tragedy would have been the Edgecombe earthquake of 87.
Mm-hmm.
That might have been the one, but that didn't quite do the same damage to it. And also the interesting thing that did happen with Christchurch was the fact that the biggest insurer in the area was AMI.
Yep.
And AMI, that's basically what led to what was AMI to go bust in New Zealand and basically had to be split into two divisions, was Christchurch that basically killed AMI. I mean, yes, it's nice and great that AIG bought out AMI and has managed to retain the brand.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that was basically what sent AMI down the Googler, was Christchurch earthquake, because they had a very concentrated pool of policies based in the Canterbury region.
Mm-hmm. I found it interesting that, forgive me, I don't know the MP's name that was asking him the questions from Labour, but...
Arena Williams.
Yeah, Arena Williams, thank you. Yes, when she was asking him, it's like, oh, why were all these projects cut then? And I think, I didn't really take down too many notes, that, but it appeared that Chris Penk didn't really have a viable answer for that. He didn't really have much of an answer for why it was cut. He's like, oh, well, we just made them into smaller pieces and smaller projects, and we're still carrying out just tiny versions of these projects. But it doesn't really answer the question. Like he's talking about, we need this need for, we need a more of a stronger pipeline of works. But then National comes along and makes all these cuts.
Yeah. And in this particular case, cuts on steroids with ACT.
Cuts on steroids, and then you've got ACT to the Regulatory Standards Bill, and you've got builders leaving for Australia. It doesn't really add up. That's the biggest problem I have with Chris Penk's position is, he's relying on the free market to fix these problems that really can only be fixed from the position of central and local government working together.
Yeah. And actually, this is the other thing is with the insurers of leaky homes. Most of the liability of leaky homes fell onto councils, not on the builders or the architects who did the job. And Andy made a good point about there. It's like, what happens if the architect or the builder goes bust? And if you professionally go bust via a limited liability company and avoid personal bankruptcy, you don't have the same restrictions placed on you, whereas if you're personally made bankrupt. And the only way that you can actually get around of when you professionally screw up and be personally held accountable is if a shareholder sues you. Well, most customers aren't shareholders.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. Yep, most customers are not shareholders.
And if you went bankrupt in New Zealand, it makes sense to go to Australia where your bankruptcy records and all that and credit reports and all that aren't taken into account.
Yeah, it makes me think about this insurance system that Andy Foster brought up. What are the insurance premiums going to look like for building companies if they go ahead with this?
Who knows? But we already have it for lawyers, we have it for accountants, we have it for doctors. The medical sector, you pay a bit for those premiums. I will have to check with Shine to find out what the nurses one is, but it's like it's a fair bit of money every year that they have to pay, for the indemnity insurance, I think is the name. But there's a lot of it that is out there, and I mean, and put it this way, we've got ACC on top of that now.
Yep.
I mean, obviously for building that ACC wouldn't matter. It's mainly about property, not about injury.
Yep.
But yes, there's a lot that's in it.
Yeah, I mean, what do you think? I mean, look, I think it's good that this idea is being brought forward. I think it's worth exploring to see what the benefits and the cons are of such a system. But I know that if they found out, okay, this is a potentially beneficial system that we can implement, I know that ACT's going to come around the corner and try and get rid of it.
Yeah. Their gut feeling is try and get rid of anything that they think is a mere, basically, inconvenience on society.
Yep.
Whether it is or not.
Yep.
It just seems to, whatever, if they think it's going to kill the economy, they get rid of it.
Yeah. Even if it won't kill the economy implementing it. I know. Yeah.
I mean, put it this way, they would be the ones out there who would advocate to, to reinstate a dangerous no right turn that has been known to kill people because, it could save time subject to you actually being able to turn out of the intersection. Very common, ironically, in the area where Cameron Luxon stood.
Oh.
Yeah, on the road out north of Tauranga on State Highway 2.
Yeah.
Put a lot of median barriers down and cut off some of the right-hand turns. Some would go, oh, but I have to drive an extra 5 kilometres to sit there and get there. I go, but you driving the extra 5 kilometres, how much longer are you taking? If you're driving this 5 kilometres, is it actually, how much do you spend waiting, turning right?
Yeah, well, I mean, it was refreshing to actually get someone intelligent from the coalition to actually sit down and have an actual discussion. That was refreshing. I liked that.
I found it very constructive. I think it's a good hire that we've left with Chris Penk.
Yep. Yeah. Okay, I want to hear more from him in the future because he sounds interesting.
We could pick up more of him on Sunday.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to sit down there and call it a night. And get ready to sit there and support our friends at BHM for their show, which is in 1 minute's time. So Laura and I are literally basically going to leave the stream and get on to watching Pat and Chewy.
Okay, see you everyone.
Yeah. So and we'll see you back on Sunday. And Laura and I will discuss what type of show we're going to be running tomorrow or whenever.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Sweet. Bye.
Thank you for watching the Order Paper, your express ticket to the New Zealand House of Representatives. Every episode, we unravel the complex world of legislation, debate, and democracy. From bills to select committees, we've got it all covered. From our team of political commentators who will dissect and explain what's happened so you can remain up to date on what's happened in the Aotearoa, New Zealand Parliament. To support our channel, you can become a Patreon member at patreon.com/It's in the Ballot. The Order Paper podcast is brought to you by It's in the Ballot Productions, live at 8 p.m. New Zealand Standard